So I meant to do this video a couple days ago, but life got in the way. It's been a kidney stone of a week, double and triple booked all week long. So I'm finally getting around to talking about what I did last Sunday. But I really did have a nice experience on Sunday. It was a rainy Sunday morning here, and I had the opportunity to check out Keith Gleason's Swamp Tales. And it reminded me of an art form. I'm sure this art form is still out there, although I just don't see it much. The art form of the comic strip. When I was younger, I just remember comic strips being more prevalent, particularly on Sundays. You had the Sunday Funnies, which was a cornerstone of every kid's week. You go over to your great-grandparents for brunch after church, and your great-grandfather would have the newspaper, which would be extra thick because it was the Sunday edition, and he would just peel out the Sunday Funnies and hand them to you. But not just Sunday. They were in every day's edition of the paper. Some of them were self-contained, where you have the setup, the middle, and the punch all at once. Which my hat is off to people who can pull that off, because it's got to be difficult to set up and then hit the punchline every day. It's kind of the comic equivalent of a short story, which I've always said a short story is in many ways harder to write than a novel, because you have to get right to the nitty-gritty real quick. You don't have any time for the slow build. But I had the opportunity to read Swamp Tales by Keith Gleason. Now, Keith Gleason is a guy whose work has been known to me almost since I started getting involved with Comicsgate and started becoming familiar with Alterna. Keith's work on Mighty Mascots is something that one of the projects I backed early on in my backing career. And Mighty Mascots is a lot of fun. And Mighty Mascots is fun for the whole family. I get them, and when I'm done with them, I hand them out to my grandkids. But I wasn't familiar with Swamp Tales. I just backed his most recent Mighty Mascots campaign at a high tier, or high enough tier, that it contained his previous work, including Swamp Tales. Now, Swamp Tales is a comic strip that, as near as I can tell, he's worked on his whole life, because there were some strips in there that were clearly done when he was a kid. So these are characters that he's grown up with. He created them as a child, and they grew up with him. Takes place in a swamp. Got all the creatures you would expect to see in a swamp. There's a frog and a snake, spider, all the sort of creepy, crawly things you'd see in a swamp. Tone-wise, strike that. Let me say it another way. It invoked in me sort of a mixture of Calvin and Hobbes and Pogo. I mean, the Pogo comparison is pretty easy because it takes place in a swamp, so that's why I'm thinking Pogo. But the characters had a sort of whimsical, bemused worldview that reminded me even more of Pogo. But also it invoked Calvin and Hobbes. One of the things I remember most about Calvin and Hobbes is something a critic said, that On top of everything else, Calvin and Hobbes is just fun to look at, and that's how I felt about Swamp Tales. It was just fun to look at, and ultimately, the experience I had, this is how I started this video, was a very nostalgic experience for me. It was the experience of reading Sunday Funnies, at my great-grandparents'. On a rainy Sunday here at the Tuttle House, just sort of kicking back and reading a collection of strips. There's no arc. There was a bit of a narrative flow in the sense that the strips were told in a sequential order, that one did at least loosely lead into the next one, but it wasn't a narrative flow like you get with a comic book or a graphic novel. It was just sort of little bite-sized chunks, so you could really kind of just kick back and enjoy it and not worry about keeping, all these narrative details in your head. You can just let it flow over you, like swamp water. No, it was a lot of fun. The next time Keith Gleason has a Mighty Mascots campaign, or any campaign that puts his prior work on display or as a tier, I would recommend it. I would recommend it for you, and I would also recommend it'll be a nice gift to one of your kids or one of your grandkids. I like to give Comicsgate stuff to my grandkids because it's important to keep the love of the medium alive, and I don't think you're going to be able to keep the love of the medium alive with kids these days with the crap that's being churned out by corporate comics. So I like when Comicsgate has tiers that contain things you can give to the kids and get them excited, and that's what I've done with Keith Gleason's work over the years, and it's what I'm going to do with Swamp Tales. But it was just a heck of a lot of fun. So once again, 4 days after the fact, this has been Tom Tuttle.